What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Week 12 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, Mr. Colin Wilson for the lovely Tin Horn weekend. What's going on?
I love Tin Horn. I love shit running through a Tin Horn. I think Saban loves it too. God knows I've done enough studying on some of these FCS crossovers. Kind of happy to put Maction to bed. This has not gone well for me. The Central Michigans, the Western Michigans not showing up. It's been a poor MAC season for me. So I'm ready to move on and get to the big boys.
Yeah, I had it for 15 midweek Maction bets in a row until Buffalo fumbling at the goal line. One of the most brutal ways I've lost a bet. But we are on to the weekend. We have a lot to get to. We'll go through rapid fire, cover a bunch of games. We have 4 marquee matchups to get to. We'll even talk some Tin Horn matchups. Some FC Yes or No makes its return. Have some trash as always. And then we'll close out here and go 3 and out. Talk a little Friday night lights. Is there Friday night? I think there's Friday night game, isn't
there? Yeah. Yep.
And we will do our favorite underdog before we get out of here. What is why don't I have the
your favorite team, Colorado and Washington State?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm out of it. I've been sick. I have a horrendous flu, but I can't just take a day off. So I don't sleep Tuesday to Thursday, so I also haven't slept with the flu. It's been absolutely brutal. So a little out of it, but properly prepared as always. So let's get right into it.
This is why our bosses let us essentially take off from mid-June to like mid-July. It's because we have to work every day in October and November, December. So,
yep. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with a little, before we get to the marquee matchup, let's get to a little look ahead or look away. This is when we look at the schedule from the previous week and the following one to see if there is any impact to these teams. That could be looking ahead. There could be a letdown spot. Maybe they pull their starters a little sooner. So let's start with the one and only Egg Bowl next week, which will always be one of my favorite games, regardless of even where the teams stand, because there's just pure what's the
fuckery. Fuckery.
In that game, no matter what, Mississippi State is way down. Ole Miss is out of all the races, but the game will still be fun in an island spot Thanksgiving night, as it is every year. Before those teams get to the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss will host ULM. They are, let's see what that line is up to. 37.5 point favorite, and Mississippi State 14-point favorite over a suddenly rejuvenated Southern Miss squad. Anything in either of these home battles for Mississippi teams?
And under in both these games all the way. I'll start off with Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin says we have a lot to play for. We want to be undefeated at home. Then he says you would like to have your players have a lower play count, lower snap count, get more guys experience. That tells me that they're not all in on this game. They want it to be low. They want running plays. They're going to get some experience into some of the freshmen. Then you flip over to Terry Bowden, head coach at ULM. He's like, I'm trying to get a competitive balance of getting a head start, of being competitive in this game, and I want a head start on next year. And he said that freshman quarterback Blake Murphy, he's not going to play in this game. It would be his 4th appearance. He's saving that for next week so he doesn't burn his red shirt. He's going to play against Louisiana next week. So this is a game where red shirt management becomes paramount to Terry Bowden. And he says you have to give your upperclassmen a chance to play and do the best they can and honor them and let them play. So some of the seniors that he hasn't wanted to play, not a part of the first string, he's going to let them play here. So both coaches saying they're going to do things a little bit differently and just try to get it out of Dodge. Same thing with Southern Miss and Miss State. I mean, Mississippi State, first off, Mississippi State hasn't scored 2 touchdowns in a game since Western Michigan on October 7th. And Greg Knox gets the interim tag after being an analyst this year. He served in the same role in the 2017 Tax Slayer Bowl, the vaunted Keaton Thompson 31-27 win over Lamar Jackson. But Knox has heavy experience as a special teams coach. Mississippi State's special teams aren't very good, but he's a former running back coach at Miss State, Florida under Dan Mullen. And then in the MAC, he was with Buffalo last year. And I think all of this is to say, I tried to find a connection between him and Will Hall. Well, Will Hall found it, right? He says, I know Greg Knox. I know him well. Him and my dad are really good friends. I knew him when I was young, and I think the world of him, and he's always been good to me. There is no chance either one of these guys want to blow each other out. Now, that isn't Knox talking, but Knox has known Will Hall since he was a kid. There's no chance that Mississippi State's going to blow this game out. Everybody wants to get out of Dodge and play the next week. And they haven't even scored 2 TDs, so this is under.
We don't know if we don't know if Rodgers is going to play, and Marks too. They're starting running back, and Will Rogers has been out for a while. We don't know the status of either.
Can Southern Miss win this game?
Sure. I mean, look, Southern Miss, they made some schematic changes. They upset Louisiana. They beat UL Monroe by 17. Go back to the App State game. They were leading in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
So that's all after they got thumped by South Alabama, 55-3. And then Will Hall basically came out and said, we're changing everything. So the defense is still bad. And I mean, just to give you a lens into this UL Monroe team that plays Ole Miss, Southern Miss beat them 24-7. I mean, that is the only time this Southern Miss defense has really held up this year. But yeah, they're playing better overall over the last 3 weeks. If this is just this like Mike Wright basic running offense, then I don't know. I mean, I think that Southern Miss could have some success, and they can control the clock here. Like, it's just going to be what they basically have done. They've just fed Frank Gore.
Yep.
Over the past few weeks. I mean, Frank Gore, who was a stud over the past 3 weeks, he had 24 for 247, 24 for 131. And then last week he had 33 carries for 158 yards. So, yeah, if this is Mike Wright, Southern Miss has got a shot. So keep an eye on the statuses of Will Rogers and Marks for Mississippi State. One final look ahead or look away connection. Obviously, we have the game next week between Michigan and Ohio State, which I think is probably going to break every year. That's the most watched regular season college football game. I think this year, if they're both undefeated, assuming that they are, I think this will break the record by a wide margin. Before we get to those games, before we get to the big rivalry game next week, Ohio State will host Minnesota. They're 27.5-point favorites, and Michigan will travel to Maryland. They are sitting around 19.5-point favorites.
Mm-hmm.
One interesting nugget here: since 2005, Michigan and Ohio State are just 12-21-1 against the spread the week before the game, failing to cover by about 4 points per game on average. And that includes a 5-13 against the spread record when favored by double digits. I'm semi-interested in both dogs. I'm going to play Maryland reluctantly. I'm sure they'll be down 55-0 in the second quarter. But I don't really expect much from Michigan here. There is no reason. It's just a terrible spot too. That emotional game last week at Penn State. You play your second straight road game, noon kick in College Park with Ohio State game on deck. So they could come out a little flat. And this Maryland team could move the ball. They can move the ball, pretty much on anyone. You saw them up at the half at Ohio State. They just kill themselves with turnovers. You have to hope that this game doesn't go like it did 2 years ago at Maryland, when Maryland just gave Michigan 50 short fields, a punt return for a touchdown, a pick six, and it got out of hand. But last year, they only lost by 7 at Michigan. And Talia had some success throwing the ball. Their offensive line is pretty good in pass protection. So I think Maryland can score enough to get 17 to 20 here to cover this number, which I make, closer to around 15-ish, and then throw in the spot, and then throw in the fact that I just don't think that Michigan is going to risk much or show much, especially once they build a lead. Like it's like, let's just get out of here. There's no such thing as style points for Michigan this year. They're undefeated. All they got to do is win out. So yeah, I think this is now Maryland's next Super Bowl. It's a little concerning that they got blown out by Penn State, but again, they were right there with Ohio State until a bad pick six in the second half basically flipped that game. I mean, they were live to win it in the second half. And, I just don't expect to see much from Michigan. So, and then same with Ohio State. Ohio State, it's not a team I love as a big favorite. Would love to get a 28 here with Minnesota. I don't know who's going to cover Harrison. And that Minnesota offense just sometimes can vomit. I trust the Maryland offense more, even though it's a little bit of a shorter number. And even just looking at the market, Penn State closed a 7-point favorite at Maryland a couple weeks ago. Now, granted, they rolled, but Maryland took massive money, closed the 7-point favorite. Now Michigan in a terrible spot, and a team that plays super slow is a 19.5-point favorite. That's a 12.5-point difference. That's not, last week we saw Michigan as a 4.5-point favorite against Penn State. So I think this is a little inflated. I like Maryland, lean to Minnesota, might throw a little bit on them, but we'll be on Maryland, just waiting to see if a 20 pops and where the market goes because it's in a dead range. Do you have any thoughts on either of these games?
Yeah, I make Michigan 17, so I think it is a little too high. I'm not going to get involved with this one because I think we mentioned it 2 years ago. This is the exact same spot. Maryland was between Penn State and Ohio State, and Michigan beat them 59-18. And Harbaugh is saying things that I don't want to be any part of being on the opposite side of it. Mr. Bodog Jim, Mr. I don't associate with gamblers, says this week the mission last year was a happy mission. This year, it's a mission of faith. It's a mission about speaking truth to power. It's a mission on playing with each other as a band of brothers. When the hell did Jim Harbaugh become so biblical? Mission of faith. I'm not going to get involved with this guy talking out of both sides of his mouth. But on the other game, I do have a play. I took a Marvin Harrison Jr. 2+ TDs at plus 175 as a prop. And so the thinking is I make the side and the total spot on with the projection. So I'm not going to get a play in there. But if Ryan Day is going to keep up in this Heisman conversation, he's got to have it in the touchdowns. Now I veered for the touchdowns and not the yards. Why? Look at the last 3 weeks. He's had 2 touchdowns every game, but he's had 10 targets, 123 yards against Wisconsin, 7 targets, 25 yards against Rutgers. That's it, 25 yards. And then Michigan State, he had 9 targets for 149. And again, 2 TDs in all of those games. So he's going to get targeted 7 to 10, but the yardage has really fluctuated from 25 up to 125. But the deal is it's the only place they can throw. It's the only place they're efficient. It's the only place they're making explosive plays, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr.
Minnesota's good safeties can cover tight ends. That's their only strength of the defense. Their corners are not good.
Right. And I don't particularly think Kyle McCord can do anything except hit Marvin Harrison on a crosser and let him do all the work. 2 TDs at plus money like that, I'll take it. It's Heisman season. He needs the numbers, and I think Ryan Day is going to do everything to get him the numbers. But I'm not going to get involved in a backdoor or any kind of total. I make side and total the same. But yeah, I think Marvin Harrison absolutely getting his touchdowns. Yards, a little bit tougher to gauge.
All right, good stuff there. Before we get to the marquee matchups, reminder, BBOC podcast presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get to the marquee matchups of the day. All right, let's start in the SEC, where Georgia will travel to Knoxville to take on Tennessee, reeling after that embarrassing loss against Missouri, Georgia sitting at 10-0. Tennessee 7-3. Georgia 10.5-point favorite here. Under has taken some money down to 58.5. So obviously, I think I would imagine. Well, an interesting scenario that we've talked about a lot of wrenches in the college football playoffs, and a really interesting scenario is Georgia loses to Tennessee but beats Alabama. You throw them in the one-loss mix with a pretty soft schedule. There's a lot of chaos to come, unless all of these teams just went out. Tennessee, I mean, they're a hard nut for me to crack. Obviously one of the best rushing attacks in the country, and then you throw the variance of Joe Milton in there, right? So he'll have these good flashes and bad flashes. It's just so inconsistent. I was surprised that Tennessee couldn't run it. I wasn't surprised that Tennessee couldn't run it well against Missouri. Missouri's run defense is very good, but I thought they would have a little bit more success. And their defense, that was the most surprising aspect to me last week, is their defense just couldn't do anything. I mean, they couldn't, they run, pass, you name it. And then, you go back to you go back to the Florida game where on the road they got crushed. Obviously, different story in Neyland Stadium. Crowd will be hyped here. Georgia's offense is rolling right now, hitting their stride at the right time, getting healthier across the board as well. The defense is definitely a step down from the unit that we saw over the past 2 years. You can run on them a bit. They're not really getting a ton of pressure. The secondary is an elite. Now, look, it's still one of the best defenses in the country, but it's not a unit that's going to completely shut down teams. And it's pretty logical. They lost a ton of NFL talent. The question is, can Tennessee take advantage? I think that they'll have some success on the ground, but what can Milton do? Can he be consistent enough? Can he hit some deep balls? It's a tough game for me to crack. What do you see here in Georgia, Tennessee?
Might be Nico time, right? I took the under. I split my bet on a first half under and a full game under here. Both head coaches came out in their press conferences this week and talked about how they need to establish the run. Josh Heupel starting off saying that the best way to keep pressure off of Joe Milton is to simply stay on schedule and get the acquired yards and first and second down. Easier said than done, right? So, they have Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. You would think they'd be able to take the load and ease the pressure off Joe Milton, who's, average depth of target is lowest of his career. You would think that that's the path. Okay, well, let's go down there and say that Tennessee wants to do that. The way that you beat Georgia, I keep saying this over and over and over every week, is outside zone. Peyton Thorne, 90 yards, it's because of outside zone. You look at Jackson Dart, how successful they were. The problem was Ole Miss ran out of healthy tackles, healthy everything in that game. They were running thin on health. But the way to attack Georgia, it's all in the run concept metrics, is outside zone. Tennessee does not run outside zone at all. 15 snaps this season, they run outside zone. Their entire life is inside zone. Georgia defense, even with a light box showing 6 in there, they have been able to tear that apart. So I don't think Tennessee is going to be able to run the ball. I think there is going to be long down and distances and third down for Joe Milton, and that's going to be a very inefficient day for him going up against that quarters coverage of Georgia. Now, on the other side, Kirby Smart said the key to playing on the road in the SEC is to be able to establish the run at the very first part of the game. He says we have to be more physical at the line of scrimmage. We have to dominate them at the line of scrimmage. So, the Tennessee run defense, it's like you said, like they were excellent prior to the Missouri game. They were excellent at stopping inside and outside zone, which is what Georgia's going to try to put on them. So if the Tennessee defense steps up, I'm looking good with my full game under, my first half under. At some point, I do believe Carson Beck's going to start hitting explosives downfield. Now that we, have seen that Ladd McConkey is hurt again, Brock Bowers is working back in, but if it is Brock Bowers, it's shorter passing and not long bombs that are going down the field. So I like the under here, 59 being second biggest key number in totals. So try to get on the right side of that.
Any feel on the side, and if not, or even if so, could you see Tennessee winning this game? What is the path? How would this have to play out?
Well, I make the number 8.5. And so Sunday I was sitting around thinking I've got to take a Tennessee number at 10.5. I have to, just as a numbers perspective alone. So
now
then
9-2.
Yeah. And so I went down the path of, okay, well, you're going to have to be successful establishing the rush. the fact that Joe Milton does not run off tackle, or Jalen Wright or Jabari Small don't run off tackle, which you can do against Georgia because they have a light box and they allow it. And we've seen quarterbacks do it to them before. Brady Cook did it. Peyton Thorne did it. Tennessee doesn't do it. And so I can't do it. Even though the number's higher, I can't do it because the inevitable Georgia 2-score lead and explosives. I'm not getting in front of the Death Star, right? It is Georgia Death Star mode late November. I'm not getting in front of it when you can't do the one thing that they have trouble with.
What is the path for Tennessee winning this game? Milton just has to find those like stretches where he is accurate for a longer stretch and hits some deep balls. Is that like?
I mean, you're asking me what
so inconsistent with those,
right? They have to establish the run to generate more than 6 guys in the box. Once you do that, Georgia will let up in their quarters coverage. But then again, remember, this is fundamentally a problem for Josh Heupel for years to come. You and I will be doing this podcast next year. Let's say he gets his Hendon Hooker back and he gets his wide receivers back. This is still a timing offense, and Georgia is going to stab your shoulders at the line of scrimmage and get you off your timing concepts. Like I'm really trying to make a case for Tennessee here. I've tried every which way, pass and run. I can't come up with it. I think they'll be feisty, right? After being embarrassed last week, they'll probably play a really good first half.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're going to be in it early. I just don't know if Milton can make enough plays because the Georgia offense right now is playing too well to just, keep them to 17-20. You're not going to do that. So Milton's going to eventually have to hit some shots, and I don't know if he'll be able to do so.
I was feeling good about Ole Miss through the first 3 or 4 series, right? I was feeling good about Ole Miss, and then this shit just snowballs on you with Georgia.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the Big 12 with a couple teams still in contention in the wild Big 12 race. Kansas State will head to Lawrence to take on in-state rival Kansas. Kansas State is a 8.5-point favorite here, over under 56.5. I don't know how to bet this game personally because I don't know who's going to be at quarterback for Kansas. There's 3 listed as or. You have Jaden Daniels, who I don't think is going to play again this year, but we'll see. Then you have Jason Bean, who got knocked out of the game last week against Texas Tech. Yeah, Lance Leipold, who he came out and said he's took a lot of reps at practice yesterday. This was yesterday. And then you have the third string, I think Connor Ballard, is that his name? Who came in. He's not really as athletic as Bean or Daniels.
Cole Ballard.
He led some scoring drives last week, but it was ugly. Like there was a lot of third down.
True freshman
conversions. Yeah. So there's gonna be a big drop off between Bean or Daniels, and then down to the true freshman Ballard. So it's very hard for me to get a feel for this because I don't have any intel or a strong feeling as to who is actually going to go for Kansas. What do you see here?
I do have a respected source on Sunday that said it's not looking good for Bean. That was Sunday. It is my plan to.
You think Leipold's playing some games here?
Yeah, I do. And, head injuries are just, I don't know. I see a lot of quarterbacks coming back from a lot of things, but not when it involves the head. And if it's not him and it's Cole Ballard, this game right now. So I power rate this 6.5. This line is.
I would like Kansas fully healthy 8.5. I would like Kansas State if it's Ballard. That's literally the difference.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. Is I make the 6.5 with Bean. Without him, I think it should be like 11. So the market's telling me that Bean is highly doubtful in this game. The Kansas defense has Kansas is not going to be able to do what they do on offense, but their heavy motion, their pistol, crazy counter concepts going on. They're not going to be able to do that with Cole Ballard. He was not able to throw the ball 9 of 20 last week. Interception. It didn't look good. Nothing about it looked good. He didn't seem like he's that mobile. So you can throw the whole Kansas offense out the window if Bean is out. Now, when you go to the other side of the ball, it's gross. I don't know what the Kansas defense is going to be able to do here. Like it is the worst. You could put 2 stat sheets up, Kansas State offense, especially running against the Kansas defense. It's bad. Kansas State's going to go inside zone, counter. Man, Kansas has allowed a very high rate of explosives and a 60% success rate against those run concepts and their opponents.
Yeah,
But
Kansas State's going to dominate the line of scrimmage here, move the ball at will. The path for Kansas is healthy being, and they have to keep up, because they're not going to get many stops.
Well, can Kansas even limit drives? No, they're 115th in quality drives. They are dead last. Did you know? I didn't even know this. They are dead last in red zone scoring, opponent red zone scoring. 40 of 41 trips to the Kansas red zone have all been scores. You know what that one team was?
OU, baby.
That's right. It was OU in the first damn trip to the red zone. So no, all the rest of them have all been scores. So Kansas State, you flip to the other side, Kansas 40 of 50 red zone attempts have been TDs. Fourth highest nationally. On Monday night when they were released, I played Kansas State team total over 33.5. And that was based on the fact that Kansas's red zone allows everybody to score TDs. Kansas State scores TDs, and Kansas State will get no resistance at the line of scrimmage on every single offensive possession they have. Now, that being said, the spread might come down with being announced out. I would expect the spread to go from 56 down to maybe 54.5 across that key. And you can get a better Kansas State team total over, because I'm not sure team total wise who they're going to take those points off of. Now, the last thing I'll say about this game, I desperately want to bet Kansas State, but there's one book right now that I do a lot of action at that is holding a 7.5 minus 115. I'm thinking about just buying the hook, put it at minus 125 and letting it go, but that's a little rich for my blood. But Kansas State should absolutely dominate in this game, no matter if Bean's playing or not.
Yeah, the difference is Kansas just has no shot of keeping up, I don't think, without Bean.
Yeah,
that's because I completely agree with you. I'm in the same price range. I would play Kansas at 8.5 if I knew they were 100% healthy. And then if I knew that Bean and Daniels were 100% out, I would play Kansas State.
Right.
So yeah, I'm on the same page as you. All right, let's move to the Pac-12 for our final two marquee games. We'll save the one with the most implications for next in Washington at Oregon State. But let's first head down to Tucson, where Arizona will host Utah. Arizona is, I think, still sitting around a 1-point favorite here. Over under 45. Believe it, Arizona has a pretty simple path to the Pac-12 championship. I mean, it's not likely, but they need Oregon State to beat Oregon, and they just need to win out. And if that happens, they go to the Pac-12 championship. They play, obviously, Utah and then Arizona State next week. Utah is not mathematically eliminated. But they would need a 5-way tie for second place. And they would need USC to get in. It's a mess. They're not going to go there. So the Pac-12 could get a little crazy, especially with Oregon State, who we'll talk about next. They control their own destiny as well. Obviously, I don't need to, this isn't breaking news. I'm on Arizona here. Utah, Arizona's been just a machine at home for what it's worth. And I think this is a really good matchup for Arizona. Number one, very balanced offense with a great line. And we talked about this similar price range against UCLA. What is the strength of UCLA's defense? It's that defensive line. All right, they got just studs across the defensive line. What can Arizona do? Pass protect. And that they can neutralize this Utah defensive line, short passing attack. This game plays out to me very similar to that UCLA game, because then you look at the UCLA offense, can't really throw it, heavy rush. That's kind of Utah's offense. They don't really have great receivers on the outside. What's Arizona's strength on defense? It's defending the run. So I just don't think that Utah, especially with the injuries at tight end, they just can't take advantage the middle of the field with short passes. And I think Arizona can. Their short passing attack, ground game. So I think this is a really good matchup for Arizona. Utah's second straight road game after that, max effort in Washington. They're basically pretty much eliminated from going back to the Pac-12 title again. I think this Arizona team will be hyped at home, where they've been great all year. And I think that Utah just, Kyle Whittingham is awesome. I do think that Utah is still a little overvalued in the market. I know they covered last week. They had no business covering. This podcast has been cursed by teams not being able to get through past the goal line. You get a goal line, a ball dropped at the 1, and then you get a field goal kicked into someone's ass at the end. But if you look back, Utah, they've had so many injuries. It was just a cursed season for them. They almost lost at Baylor, backup quarterback making his first start. Then they played, UCLA, freshman Dante Moore's first hostile environment start. Graham Mertz, his first start in a brand new scheme. Freshman Mendoza for Cal, making his first career start, and he left with an injury. Arizona State had to play their fourth-string quarterback, Jacob Conover, who is horrendous, with a decimated offensive line playing true freshman. That's 5 of their data points, which I think have inflated some of their defensive numbers. So, yeah, I think and Barnes this year, 4 big-time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays. I just don't think he has the chops to beat this Arizona secondary. And I think this very well-schemed Arizona offense, with Cowling healthy enough to come back. He left with an injury, but he's healthy and will play. And look, Sione Vaki was providing this Utah offense with this huge spark. He's not even getting any carries anymore, as you alluded to a couple weeks ago, which just came to fruition. And Arizona only allowed 3.2 yards per carry, 16th in the country. So bear down. Give me the Arizona team. Good matchup here. Good run D. Good offensive line to pass protect against that Utah front. You agree, or you want to go head-to-head again?
I haven't made a decision whether I'm going to play this game. I think it's a terrible spot for Utah, and the number of high-profile games they've played, and then escaping Washington with a cover. It was a joke last week. It soured me on them a little bit, but and then when I look at Arizona, you really have to. I watched that whole game on Pac-12 Network, which I can't wait to be buried, so I don't have to go through the hoops of watching that damn channel. And we talked about it. It was all punts, field position on punts. Average starting field position for Arizona was at the 20. Colorado was at the 36. They were granted a lot of advantages in that game. Arizona was still able to pull it out on the road. Good for them. But, they dominated on the ground. They averaged nearly 8 yards a carry. And Jonah Coleman averaged 16 yards per carry on 11 attempts. He's amazing. Arizona does run an even split of outside and inside zone. Utah has been very good against outside zone. So I'd expect if Arizona is going to have some explosive plays on the ground, it's all going to come from inside zone with Jonah Coleman, which they're completely capable of doing. I think where I get tripped up and I want the under in this game is that there's just no pass explosives here whatsoever. Both these teams are bottom 15 in the country in pass explosives. And we know Noah Fafita is averaged up the targets, one of the lowest in the country.
But that's how you want to attack Utah.
Yeah, no, exactly. The short passing is where you want to get them, not downfield. But does that mean they're going to be able to create explosives and get chunk yards downfield? I think Arizona's going to be able to move the chains just fine. What are they going to do when they get down into the red zone, which Utah has fallen outside the top 50 in defensive finishing drives? So I definitely see the case for Arizona. I don't like the spot for Utah. I was really kind of more warm to the under, but we'll see what I play coming up.
For what it's worth, Arizona absurd at home against ranked opponents since 2005, 22-10 against the spread, 69%. Nice. Covering by over a touchdown per game. Only Auburn has been more profitable in that role. That includes Arizona 19-6-1 against the spread as an underdog against ranked opponents, 76% against the spread with that Tucson Magic. But let's stay in the Pac-12 and go to our final marquee game. And it's a big one. Washington will look to maintain their perfect season when they travel to Corvallis to take on the 8-2 feisty Beavers. Washington obviously controls its own destiny. Win this game, win the Apple Cup, win the Pac-12 championship. Not only are they Pac-12 championships, but they are going to the college football playoff. Would be their second appearance. This line, Oregon State has taken some money. Oregon State's now up to 2.5 point favorite. Over under totals up to about 62.5. I agreed with the money coming in on Oregon State. I played Oregon State. Would play them up to 2.5. Look, this Washington team has been flirting with disaster for weeks. I mean, Arizona State should have lost that game if they had a kicker. You should have lost to Oregon, but you get all the fourth down variants. Yeah, you're in battles with Stanford. USC games back and forth, changes on a fourth down and fumble at the end of the first half. I mean, it's been just, hey, we're getting out of Dodge. The offense is still great. You could get a little bit more McMillan. You could get some McMillan at receiver. They're going to move the ball through the air. Oregon State's defense, metrically, they're actually been, pretty decent against the pass, but they have really good safeties. I mean, I love their safeties. Their corners aren't that great. That's the biggest weakness, in my opinion, on their defense. So they're not going to really be able to stick with the Washington receivers on the outside. So I think Washington will move the ball. On the other side, I think Oregon State, which has arguably the best offensive line in the country, and I think they're getting their star center back this week. They have two amazing running backs in Damian Martinez, Deshaun Fenwick. They can run the ball on anybody. And they're going up against one of the worst run defenses in the country. You look at this Washington defense. I mean, some of the stats, I mean, it's bleak. They are bottom 6 nationally in stuff rate, line yards, and success rate on rush plays.
Yep.
And the Beavers, number 2 in the country in rushing success rate. So I just think Oregon State's going to be able to move the ball down the field. So I think both teams are going to be able to move the ball. Where is the difference? And by the way, for what it's worth, Oregon State, 15th in the country in passing downs explosiveness. So I think they're going to be able to move the chains, bring the safeties up. And the Washington defense just isn't the same, especially that they've had some injuries at safety and other places. They just don't have a lot of depth on defense. And then I think Oregon State off play action is going to hit a couple deep shots here. But I think the biggest difference, and maybe I should let you just do this because I'm going to sound like you, is going to come in finishing drives. Oregon State is elite in both on offense and defense. Offense makes sense. They can run the ball as well as anybody. They can finish drives in a number of ways, and they're always going to finish in with touchdowns. And against this Washington defense, shouldn't be any different. And then Washington, they're still very good, but their offense just isn't as elite when the field shrinks because there's just not that much space, and they're running the ball a little bit better. And then on defense, they've struggled in that department. To put some numbers to it, points per opportunity, Oregon State 6th on offense, 23rd on defense. Washington 13th on offense, 68th on defense. I think that's the difference. I think Oregon State gets more touchdowns in the red zone than Washington. Look for a couple plays by my guy, Oladapo, that's their safety, who I love. Him and Arnold are a really good pair back there. But I think both teams move the ball pretty consistently. I think it comes down to finishing drives. And you know what the trump card is? Corvallis.
There we go.
I couldn't believe this. Oregon State, over the past 3 seasons, not only are they far and away the most profitable team at home, they are, including FCS games, 17-1 against the spread in their past 18 home games, covering by 10 points per game. Give me the Corvallis Magic. Washington goes down. Give me the Beavs. Do you agree?
Can't even call it an upset because Oregon State is favored, which everybody on TV is going to say it's an upset. It's not. No, I mean, you nailed it all, except for one thing. There's one other aspect working in Oregon State's favor, but no, you nailed it, man. Reeser has been a house of horrors for opponents, especially considering last year they chopped the damn field in half and only 25,000 could fit on one side, and Oregon State still covered everything. So
they were playing with like their third string quarterback.
Yeah. So this is a really tough place to play. And I think one other thing, there is precipitation coming in, 70% chance of precip coming in. The wind should be below 10 miles an hour. So I'm not really worried about that. But when you get wet field conditions, generally will help the team that is running and not the team that is throwing. And so that should be Oregon State. So a little slight note there for them. But you're right. This ground game of Oregon State is dominating teams. Damian Martinez, Deshaun Fenwick, and DJ Uiagalelei are unstoppable. I wouldn't be surprised if they average 8 yards per carry here. And you say, that sounds a little high. Well, Oregon State trails LSU as the best rushing team in the nation. Just put it this way. Utah with the troubles they've had outside of Jackson trying to find someone to run the ball, Utah posted double the national average in success rate in 27 rushing attempts against Washington. Stuckey mentioned all the bad metrics that Washington has as far as defending the rush. They're bad. They're worse. When you go into the run concepts, it looks even better for Oregon State here. But the more important aspect is what happens down around the goal line, which you touched on with finishing drives. If you go into red zone, Washington's defense is 115th in red zone rushing touchdowns. So I broke it up. I was like, let's get past finishing drives in red zone. Let's look at how well you're defending the rush, because that's what's coming for you from Oregon State in the red zone. 115th and rushing touchdowns allowed. Oregon State, second nationally in rushing red zone rushing TDs. So it's such a bad combination. Washington has to create explosives through the air. They're going to have to take advantage of the Oregon State defense. You mentioned the corners. As you mentioned, the corners are a problem for Oregon State, but missed tackles are also a big part of those corners. So do you double up on the outside, not worry about Jalen McMillan in the slots and the crossers over the middle? I think you're exactly right, Stuck. There's way too many advantages for the team that can run the ball, control the clock, limit possessions on the other side for a team that is finesse and just likes to throw the ball. Their best wide receiver runs slot over the middle and not on the outside against the weak part of Oregon State. Precip in there. I think Washington's going to be able to create a couple of explosives to the outside. That's the way that they score. When you consider what Oregon State does defensively in the red zone and in finishing drives beyond the 40 when Washington has scoring opportunities, this is all Oregon State. It's probably going to shock everybody, the national media that's on our TV. It won't shock this podcast at all.
All right, good stuff there on 4 marquee games. Let's get to let's get to 7 more. A little rapid fire. I feel like you might disagree with me here, but I don't know why. I just have actually I don't know. I don't know which way you're going to go with this. Let's start Florida at Missouri. Florida catching 11.5 on the road. I played Florida. You're telling me last week, I know Missouri dominated. Missouri closed a 3-point home underdog to Tennessee. Now they're laying 2 touchdowns more at home against Florida. I mean, Tennessee's not 2 touchdowns better than Florida. Last time, if I recall correctly, Florida also ran Tennessee out of the building in a game that they closed as a 4-point underdog at home. This line's too high. Missouri also back-to-back emotional games, like Georgia really close, blow out Tennessee. You have Eli talking shit at the end of the game. Florida, in order to move the ball in Missouri, you got to efficiently pass it. Florida can do that here. And you got underdog king, Billy Napier. Got unlucky last week, but he was trying to cover right until the end. Got to the goal line. He's 19-8 against the spread as an underdog, covering by 7 points per game. 8-3 and catching double digits. 5-1 against teams inside the top 15. Give me the Gators here. I think they keep this within like 7 to 10 probably.
At 10, I'm buying Missouri. At 11.5, I'm buying Florida. It's that narrow of a margin for me for where I make the number. Florida can absolutely score here. You consider what they do offensively, 12th in finishing drives and 17th in quality drives, a better strength of schedule than Missouri. And considering who Missouri's played, Florida's going to be able to get downfield. They're going to be able to get points up against a leaky Missouri defense. Now, I know we saw something different against Tennessee, but how much of that was Tennessee just giving up? Of course, your finishing drives didn't.
Yeah, that game was really close at the end of the first half, you recall, before
it was
some fuckery.
I mean, Tennessee didn't score on any drive past the 40. Their one touchdown was an explosive from like the 48. Missouri still has issues on defense, especially when teams are in scoring position. So I think Florida can keep up. But for me, it's all about the number. 11.5 I'd want with Florida. 10 I would want if I back Missouri. Maybe I'll play this live. We'll see.
Yeah, Missouri could be down there 2 starting linebackers. They already lost 1 for the season. Burden, I don't think is 100%. Give me the Gators here, and I'll go to war with Sunbelt Billy. Louisville at Miami. This is probably the game I spent the most amount of time on this week. Hours I was looking into this game. A normal person might just sleep to rest up and recover from the flu, but I'm looking into Miami, Louisville. So I ended up playing Miami +1, and I came away very confident in it. I went from thinking I lean Miami in the spot. I was afraid of, let's see, they're still catching 1. Total is down to 46.5. We'll lean the under there, but numbers pretty much been beat out of it. I think Miami's eventually going to close as like a 1.5, 2-point favorite. So this Louisville team, like, they get credit for being 9-1. I think they're a fraud. I mean, they've played one top 30 team per my power ratings, Notre Dame, in the spot of the year with beat up receivers and rotating offensive linemen. I mean, and they turned it over 5 times. I mean, let's look at the rest of the Louisville resume. They're 4-0 in one possession games. Either one could have won. They all could have won either way. They played NC State, who vomited the game away late. Virginia. They almost lost to Virginia at home the other week. Indiana. Almost lost to Indiana before all the Indiana changes when Indiana was bad. Had to have a goal line stand. Georgia Tech. All these teams have like changed quarterbacks and coordinators since that game. And to make it worse, I mean, like, what else? Like, you look at the other games and it's just not that impressive. They've been at home and they've had some, they blew out Virginia Tech. They've played 3 games outside of Louisville. One on a neutral against Indiana, you need a goal line stand to win. The other at NC State should have lost. They win 13-10. And then they get dump trucked by the corpse of Pitt. Like, they haven't played anyone with a pulse on the road. I remember how bad that NC State offense was with Armstrong early in the season. Whew, and they should have lost that game. So when I look at this team, and you might say, oh, well, they were struggling early with Braum, who I think is going to turn around the program. And I mean, he already has in some ways. But then you go back to that Virginia effort. I mean, what was that? So they're also dealing with injuries. Gerard Jordan isn't fully healthy. Thrash, their number 1 receiver, isn't healthy. Their number 1 corner, he might not play again, Brownlee. So they're not fully healthy. And Plummer can't move. Immobile. And his numbers under pressure are horrifying. And who gets pressure? Miami. And who's going to bring blitzes from everywhere? Lance Guidry. I think Miami's defense has been great all season. I mean, and Miami's been the opposite of Louisville. This is a Miami team that could have 9 wins. They've lost every, like, they beat Clemson, and they've played, I think, 4 or 5 teams in the top 30. They've had a much harder schedule. But Cristobal's cost them 2 wins. Doesn't take a knee versus Georgia Tech. Against NC State, calls a timeout on 4th down when they had an easy touchdown. And then they come out and they run it, and NC State stops them. 2 losses right there. They've also dealt with a hurt quarterback and other quarterback injuries. So Van Dyke will get the start now. I mean, Williams is out for the season. And there's been a lot made about his turnover-worthy throws and his interceptions. I think he has 11 in his last 5 games. Teams are dropping 8 against him. And he just has made some bad throws. But he's been also unlucky. Every one of his turnover-worthy plays has turned into an interception. He hasn't been great. He also was dealing with an injury for some of those games. From what I've gathered, he's going to be healthier this week. And I also think that Ja'Cory Brown, you're going to see some running packages for him. He started a couple games last week, still limited as a passer. But the Miami offensive line has been great. One of the most underrated units in the country is this Miami offensive line. Their receivers are good. They'll have a fully healthy running back room. It's just been the quarterback and the coach which have really held them back. But I think Miami has more talent overall. And if you look at the turnover-worthy plays and throws, Van Dyke and Plummer are equal. Plummer's just been a little luckier. I think this Miami defense is going to show up. This is their Super Bowl. Was a little worried about what they have left in the tank after last week. Could have beat Florida State with their backup quarterback. But from everything that I've read and gathered, I think that they're going to be fired up for this game. And you don't really see Miami as a home dog often, but they are 11-6 against the spread as a home dog since 2005. Also, last point I'll make, this is one of my favorite. It ended up being one of my favorite bets. Miami, top 3 special teams unit per my numbers. Louisville, 78th. So big special teams edge in a game that should be competitive. Miami takes out Louisville and makes the ACC race more interesting. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. My issue all week when wanting to lay a bet on this is the motivation, right? Like I thought that Miami was kind of looking forward to playing Florida State. Now they're week after Florida State. Do they show up here? Do they care? I mean, they cared against Florida State. But all the advantages are there that you spoke of. Like Louisville, they want to run the ball first. 58% run-pass ratio, starting with the run. Miami has a great run defense, top 15 in rushing success rate, 3rd in the nation in stuff rate defensively. So that's going to be something for Louisville to try to overcome. And you're right. They've played the softest schedule. How do you have a Power 5 conference schedule, yet you're 84th in the country strength of schedule? So I don't think it really I don't think the overall records show what these two teams are. It's more important about, does Miami have the motivation to play in this game? If they do, yeah, they absolutely. I think I've got this projected for them to win by 2. So I think I'm just looking for wanting to finish out the season strong. But I agree with you. Miami is the side.
I mean, I think it'll help. Like Louisville having 1 loss, and if they win, they clinch. So I think that'll get Miami fired up. They can basically spoil their Louisville season. Let's move on to a big one in the AAC. SMU, my Mustangs have a future on them. In the Stone Age, I'm a big SMU fan. I love their defense. I mean, some of the additions that they added through the portal have really beefed up that unit. I mean, I remember the embarrassing defenses that SMU has had. They've always had a good offense. Their running backs, too, that running back room, oh, man, that's so much talent that really could play anywhere in the country. SMU 8.5-point favorite here in the Liberty Bowl against Memphis. Both these teams are 8-2. The way the AAC race will shake out, if Memphis wins, they'll be right back in the mix because they'll have 1 loss. SMU will have 1 loss. And then UTSA and Tulane, they're undefeated. They play each other next week. So if Memphis wins, you're probably going to get a 3-way tiebreaker. It's going to come down to like a computer composite ratings to see who plays the winner of SMU Tulane. Tulane UTSA. It could get messy. SMU they had a couple secondary injuries, which I'm a little bit worried about. But last week I got to check on their official status. But SMU is so much better than Memphis. It's stupid. But I can't lay 8.5. I'll be rooting for them for my future because I think they're going to win the conference as long as they get to the title game. This Memphis team, now Seth Henneken, he can get hot, and this offense has some juice. They can't defend. They can't stop a nosebleed. And this team's been getting so lucky. They beat North Texas by 3 on a 30-yard bomb to end the game. They beat South Florida 59-50. And then last week they need overtime to beat Charlotte 44-38. I mean, they've pulled out all of these close games all season. They beat Navy 28-24. They should have lost to Navy. They beat Boise 35-32 because of a blocked field goal return. I mean, Memphis has been one of the luckiest teams in the country. They're 8-2. They could easily have, they could be 4-6 if they had some, if they didn't have great end game luck. But they'll be feisty here. I'm a little afraid. Like Memphis always pulls off one of these upsets every year, it seems, in the Liberty Bowl. But I just don't know how they'll get stops. And SMU's defense is so much better. I'm confident SMU will win without fuckery, but Memphis has been getting fuckery all year. And this line at 8.5, I can't lay 8.5. What do you see here?
I like Memphis in this spot. I wrote it up for action. That got published. You guys can go read it now. I put the bet into the app. I've really kind of been waiting for these dead numbers to play around all week before I try to get the best of that. I did miss out on 9, but I will take 8.5. And you're right, Stuck. Like Memphis has some serious issues in the stat sheet, but I think they're going to be able to keep up here. Now, Preston Stone, he played against North Texas, even though you had a couple tout services out there saying play SMU against North Texas because Preston Stone's not going to play. He did play. And, they were able to pull away at the end and shut down North Texas. And then injury with Seth Henneken. We didn't know if he was going to make the trip to Charlotte. He was on the flight. You don't make a flight on Memphis road games unless you're actually playing. Turns out he did. They won in overtime, but it wasn't because of the offense. It's because of the defense. The defense could not stop the ground attack from Charlotte whatsoever. So when you look at SMU and what they run, they dominate on the ground with outside zone of Jalen Knighton, LJ Johnson. I do expect SMU to get into scoring position. I expect them to get their points. I expect them to have as many opportunities as Memphis. But standard downs explosives is the name of the game here. These offenses are about 40th in success rate. They're about 14th and 24th in explosives on early downs. That's where Memphis really has an advantage against this SMU defense. Memphis has one of the highest rates of efficiency passing on first down. They're 7th nationally in throwing on first down. They love to throw on first down. And SMU has one of the lowest efficiencies on first down against the pass. They run a 3-3-5, really light in the box. That's exactly where Memphis is going to throw. Both defenses struggle in finishing drives. They both allow opponents 3.7 and 4.1 points every time they get across the 40. Needless to say, this one feels like a tennis match of serve bots. I think Memphis is able to stay up possession by possession. Even if they're down 2 possessions, I think they can backdoor cover here. Give me the Tigers.
Yeah, huge backdoor ability in this game. I can't play SMU, but I probably would look at SMU at like 6.5, not over a touchdown.
Right.
So don't necessarily disagree with you. Let's go to the Pac-12 for a matchup that many thought would have had more juice before the season started. Not now. 2 4-loss teams in Los Angeles when UCLA will take on USC. USC 6.5-point favorite here, over under 65.5. I look, UCLA, if healthy, they should just be able to run all just down USC's throat like everyone does the entire game. USC, maybe the UCLA defensive line could give USC's offensive line some problems. So this feels a little rich to me. But I don't know, like like Chip Kelly's going to get fired. What's going on there? Who's going to be the quarterback for UCLA? I have no idea what's going on with this UCLA program. Do you have anything here?
I do want UCLA. The problem is I have an over 8 on their win total. They have to have this game after, really blowing it as a heavy favorite. UCLA desperately needs a boost on the offensive side of the ball. It's a good thing that USC is on the schedule because they make everybody's offense look really good. They need to be able to take care of it. Their turnover margin is just way too high, and we don't know who is going to be the quarterback here. I mean, Dante Moore hasn't logged more than 7 dropbacks since week 7. Ethan Garbers 24 dropbacks in week 10 against Arizona, but now it's the Colin Schlee show. He didn't have any catastrophic mistakes against Arizona State, but like we haven't known all year since the summer who the starting quarterback is going to be from game to game.
And he's hurt too now, Schlee. Like
who knows who's playing quarterback. The bigger issue is play calling and execution and scoring opportunities. You want to know why Chip Kelly, I don't know why people are reporting that he's fired. I haven't seen anybody verify it out there, but he's going to get fired, I guess. But they are 120th in offensive finishing drives. That is really odd for a Chip Kelly team, just averaging 3.1 points on drives beyond 40. It's very unlike the Bruins. UCLA is dead last in red zone efficiency. They've only scored 28 times and 44 trips. They've only had 22 TDs. Only half their drives past the 20 have been a touchdown. That's a real problem. I mean, I can understand Chip Kelly being under the gun for that because that's supposed to be your forte. I think the question is, did the firing of Alex Grinch help the defense against Oregon? Not really. I mean, the Ducks had 552 yards. They got 71% of their available. They were limited to 3.5 points scoring opportunities. That is below national average just a bit. So, Oregon dominated with the run. They averaged 2.5 yards more per play and overall yards per play than USC. That makes me wonder if the USC offense is checked out a little bit. When you look at Oregon's 10 possessions, 2 of them ended the half, 1 missed field goal, then a field goal. First 3 drives were TDs. I don't think this USC defense has improved whatsoever. These interim co-DCs that are simply looking for a spark, they didn't get it. So, yeah, UCLA should win this game. I just don't know what's going on with Chip Kelly in the red zone play calling because it's bad. They're one of the worst in the nation.
Oh, yeah. Some of the calls have been horrendous. Which you wouldn't, like, they can run the ball, so you would think they'd be better, but nope. Oh, by the way, I'm going to move in the rundown. I'm going to move Colorado Wazoo to Friday Night Lights.
Yep.
And then I'm going to move Texas because you're doing them later.
Yep.
And UNLV as well. All right, let's move on to everybody's favorite segment. FC Yes or No makes its return. All right, Tin Horn weekend. We got to talk a little bit about at least a couple of these games. Chattanooga at Alabama. What did I see? Alabama like a 45-point favorite. I think I saw that out there somewhere.
They get 42 per our FCS power ratings.
Yeah, Chattanooga, they have Artobius, I forget his name. They have a kid who was on like the UCLA. Speaking of Chip Kelly, he was on like the UCLA scout team for like 4 years, transferred to Chattanooga. They have a couple good receivers. Saban, as he always does, was hyping during Tin Horn weekend, hyping the Chattanooga offense, saying that they have all their receivers could start in the SEC. But they run like an RPO. They offense can't really run the ball efficiently. They can throw it around. They do have some talented receivers. The problem is their offensive line's not going to hold up here. So it's hard for me to see how they'll score. The good news is, if you want to back Chattanooga, is that like Milroe, I mean, they're going to get a lead and then probably pull them, and then Alabama's backup quarterbacks, even against Chattanooga. I mean, I doubt Alabama's going to want to show much. Maybe second half under here for me. What do you got here?
I'm thinking
It's
first half.
going to be like Ty Simpson in the second half, handing it off. And
Yeah.
I don't think Chattanooga's offensive line can hold up.
So if you go on history, like you'd want the first half under, right? In 10 horn weekend games against non-conference teams, Saban is 2-6 against the spread in his last 8. The 2 that it covered were 2017 Mercer. They were up 35-0 at half.
Remember they were losing to Citadel at the half? That was one of
the Citadel. They were tied to Citadel 10-10 at half. But their recent teams that they played, Austin P, Western Carolina twice, Tennessee Chat, right here, and the Citadel. I mean, these are teams that have all covered in the first half in this spot, and UT Chat's coming off a 3-point loss to Furman. Furman is like they're second in FCS top 25. They've and Chattanooga's beaten teams like Mercer, who's in the top 25. They had a short loss to Western Carolina, who might win the FCS national title. Their offense is 23rd in FCS. They average 31 points per game, and their defense is 22nd. They allow
it's a decent team.
It's a good team. It's not a pushover. So I think all that to be said, because of history and the way Alabama treats these games, and they don't cover in the first half whatsoever. I want the first half under. I'm sorry, I want the first half on the mocks. They haven't released it as we are talking about this right now. I would take 24. We'll see what the number is going to be. It's sitting around 45 right now, the full game spread. I don't think they're going to release halves, maybe till Saturday morning, but I would definitely take first half 24 in the mocks.
The Lions of North Alabama, they are not a decent FCS team. They will face their first FBS team on the road since the 50s when they played Vanderbilt. They will travel to Florida State. Florida State is a really interesting team just in general because, they haven't played a ton of good teams. They've been so inconsistent. They're up and down, but they also have a lot of starters that have been hurt, and then they sit a bunch of starters. Like, they rest guys a lot more than some of these top teams. So the data points for Florida State are really interesting. All right, they're not going to matter in this game, I'll tell you that. North Alabama can't stop a nosebleed. They are, you want to talk about shit passing through a tin horn. North Alabama has no defense whatsoever. They have an intriguing offense. Your guy, Brent Dearman, remember, former offensive coordinator at Kansas.
Yeah. Wrote a book.
Writes books on offense. He's the head coach there. Their offense can move the ball a bit, but they just turn it over all the time. They're inefficient in the red zone. They get a ton of penalties, and they can't stop anybody. But the offense has, it's a well schemed offense. It's been a bit unlucky. They lost a ton of fumbles. The interesting part about this game, North Alabama, who I think they just lost the game 52-50. They can't. If you look at all their defensive metrics at the FCS level, they're all outside the top 100 in defense. So if Florida State cares, even if they don't care, they might get to 60 or 70 here. And you'll probably have Jordan Travis be pulled in the second quarter. It's senior day. There's a kid on Florida State who's celebrating his 3rd senior day. It's crazy in today's date.
Thank you, COVID.
So yeah, does Florida State even play anybody? I don't know. Did they just sit all the guys that have been dealing with injuries, their 2 best receivers? But you probably get Tate Rodemaker in here really quickly. Florida State still should be able. Then their second string is better than FCS teams. They should be able to score at will. The interesting part is what. So I might look at the over here. There's a chance Florida State would score 77 in this game, depending on how long their starters are in. I just don't see how North Alabama is going to get any stops. The interesting part to me, though, is what is this North Alabama? What's Brent Dearman going to cook up? Was he writing books? Was he writing chapters of books during the past week? Because they had a bye. They're not going anywhere. This is their last game. So, is he just trying to get a look at some other guys for next year? Does he throw out the kitchen sink here and they have some trick plays early?
No punts.
So yeah, never punting. So really hard game to handicap because North Alabama had a bye before Florida State to close out the year. What kind of schedule is that? But Florida State should score at will. I think Dearman could cook up to get them to, even if it takes a touchdown to garbage time, maybe 14. So I might look over here, but It's a tough game to handicap. What do you got here?
I was going to say, I think that, so first off, our numbers are FCS power rating numbers. We're going to make this 52.5. If you go out and look at
I was
Saturday,
going to guess 55, and I don't price these lower tiered FCS
yeah,
teams.
if you go out to Sagarin, who does make totals between FCS and FBS crossovers, they make it 58.8. So
Over.
I would play the over. I will play the over with you at 59 or better. Absolutely on the open. I'll play that. Hell, I might make it a best bet because it doesn't seem like I think Brett Dearman can get the ball moved up and down the field. Now, Florida State doesn't seem like they want to play until they're challenged. And you know, the other thing that's scary is that they have not gone over the total of 59 points since they played Boston College in week 3 and they scored 60. I mean, these games have been low. 24-7 against Pitt, 27-20 against Miami, right? Even 41-16 against Wake. Even the Duke game went 58 points. So I would say that this is going to go over only because maybe North Alabama for 2 or 3 series is doing some crazy shit like not punting, going for it in their own territory, or your spotted field position at like your 30 or your 40.
Yeah, because they turn it over.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I just don't. How does Florida State not score here? Even if they're just late, like North Alabama's D is so bad that like just the talent. Florida State's going to break so many runs and like
Right. So we need 7 from North Alabama, though. I think we need 7, maybe 10.
Yeah.
I think
I think there's a chance that Florida State gets to like 70, like
yeah.
if they care from the jump, and then their starters play a little longer.
Well, if he cares about his position in the college football playoff with Texas and Alabama breathing down everybody's back in that top 4, you're going to need as many style points as possible before you get to the committee selection on Tuesday, or you're going to, I mean, if this game is within 35 points, it's going to raise some eyebrows.
Is there a world where undefeated ACC champion Florida State gets left out? Is there a world? It's obviously not likely, but is there like a 1% world where that happens?
There is a 1% world because I think there's a 0% world where the SEC champ is not in.
And they're just going to say like Florida State, you've played nobody.
They've done it before, not with an undefeated team, but they've done it before. That is the kind of like narrative they've given to the Pac-12 for years. I know the Pac-12's had 2 lost champs, but that's the kind of narrative they like to hand out. Oh, you haven't played anybody. You don't have it in your resume.
Yeah.
Who's Florida State played, by the way?
Miami's backup quarterback.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to some trash. All right. By the way, to our producer, he sent me a trash man uniform that I have to wear. I cannot find the package. I don't know if my wife took it. We can't find it, Mitchell, if you want to send me another one.
Got stuck in a Halloween box.
Yeah, it could be. All right, let's get to some trash. This week, only 3 trash picks. Let's go. Let's start with I'll get everyone riled up on the Group of 5. Shout out to the Group of 5 podcast. Make sure you check that out. Their episode's out now. Always do a great job. Let's start by fading the Ponzi scheme Pavia in New Mexico State.
Oh man,
I'm laying it with Auburn. I know they have Alabama on deck, but let's take a look. This is the same spot for Auburn every single year. They have a clown in week 12, and then they play Alabama. Usually they play like Georgia the week before this. It's usually a huge sandwich spot. Over the past 5 times they played a Group of 5 or FCS team in this week, they've won them all by 24 plus. Average margin of victory 42, including 2 games against Conference USA schools. They blow out teams in this spot, usually just like a get right, we're angry. Since 2005, for what it's worth, Hugh Freeze, 26-12-1 against the spread as a favorite of more than 2 touchdowns. Most profitable coach college football history as a favorite of 2+ touchdowns. And he has a lot of familiarity with this team. He was at New Mexico State. He was at Liberty last year. Has a lot of familiarity with Pavia. Pavia's legs or everything in this offense, I don't think he's going to play. So their quarterback's going to be out. They say he's questionable and he's limited. He has a hamstring injury. Why in God's name would you play Diego Pavia at Auburn with a hamstring injury? You already have locked into a bowl. You already are locked into the conference championship. And it's a hamstring. You tweak it, he's done for the year. You're not winning this game. Why would you play him? Anyone that you could think of that you want to rest up for the conference championship, you rest here. New Mexico State has nothing to play for at all. The talent mismatch in this game is so big, it's ridiculous. And I mean, look, you got to give credit. I give credit to New Mexico State, and they've cost me money 3 times since I faded them successfully 3 times to start the year. Who did they cost me money against? Middle Tennessee, who missed a 30-yard field goal. I mean, I just can't get a back door this year. La Tech, who actually outplayed them, and then Sam Houston State. That was a bad call. By the way, New Mexico State lost at home to UMass, who lost by 50 at Auburn. Auburn's offense finally starting to find some rhythm, as you would expect, with a Hugh Freeze offense, brand new scheme, starting to find some things late in the year. New Mexico State, this is in such a big step up in class. Their strength of schedule, if you go by Sagarin, who ranks FCS teams, is 150. Southern Utah has a harder schedule. The next hardest schedule in FBS, 133. Liberty, also in Conference USA. I mean, the Conference USA is such a joke. Auburn top 30 schedule. Just will outclass New Mexico State here. And I don't think New Mexico State quarterback's going to play, and I think they're going to sit other starters. They're already locked into everything. There's nothing to play for here. Give me Auburn, War Eagle. Freeze is a big favorite, is always money.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the 2014, 2015, 2016 Ole Miss teams, whenever they would have positions like this, because I wanted to find a correlation between Hugh Freeze coaching an SEC team and letting teams of this nature come in. I mean, if you, it's pretty ugly, right? Presbyterian 2014, 48-0. UT Martin 2015, Ole Miss beat him 76-3, and then next week beat Fresno 73-21. 2016, that Ole Miss team wasn't very good. It was just 38-13 against Wofford. So, they generally take this. Hugh Freeze takes these games extremely serious. He doesn't take the week off. He has a very good track record of scoring as many points as possible. Then when you go into the statistics on this game, I completely back you here, because all New Mexico State is Diego running the ball. They're fantastic running the ball. And if he's not going to run.
And he runs around to create explosives, buying time downfield.
Right. And even if you think that he does play and they're full strength and they want to run the ball, keep in mind that New Mexico State has a strength of schedule of 130th, almost dead last in the nation. I mean, they've been running the ball against lawn chairs. When you turn over to the Auburn side, I mean, they're peaking right now. And Hugh Freeze said this week that we want to keep that momentum going. That's Jarquez Hunter and Peyton Thorne doing zone reads, inside, outside, RPOs. New Mexico State's defense is 99th in defensive rushing success rate. Not good. They're 93rd in standard downs and success rate. Not good. If Diego doesn't play, I'm not sure how they get over 11.5, which is their team total. But I agree with you. Auburn all the way here. Freeze generally needs his teams to stay in sync on offense, which means they need to score a lot of points.
Yeah. And even if Diego does play, it's a hamstring injury. I'm sure that he's either not or we're going to be told not to run around as much. And then once Auburn goes up, they're probably going to pull everyone to stay healthy. New Mexico State is playing for a conference championship. Nothing.
They don't even need him against Jacksonville State next week, which is going to be Jacksonville State's Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. We'll be fading New Mexico State again next week.
Did you see the payout though? Did you see what New Mexico State's getting paid out here?
What?
$1.8 million. I mean, just take that check, put it in the pocket, get on the plane. I'm out.
Noon Eastern, CBS Sports Network, my favorite time slot. Let's go with Army. Army plus the points against Coastal. Here's another team. I don't think Coastal shows up. Coastal has nothing to play for here. They can clinch the division in the conference championship next week against James Madison. This game means nothing. Non-conference matchup, noon kick against a triple option. You know what you need when you face a triple option? A focused week of practice and a team that care. Like, again, I think they'll sit all their hurt quarterbacks. I think that anyone else that's hurt, you probably sit here. And Coastal Carolina's run D stinks. 98th line yards, 95th rush play success rate, 120th power success rate, 90th yards per carry allowed. That's not good against Army. Army needs this game to get the bowl eligibility. So Army always shows up here. They're a dog. I mean, for what it's worth, Jeff Monken, underdog of more than a field goal, 28-13-1 against the spread, covering by a touchdown per game, 5th most profitable coach as a underdog of more than a field goal in college football history. Talking out of 700 coaches since 2000, I should say. Yeah, give me Army. Great spot here. I don't think Coastal gets off the bus, and it's a good matchup for Army.
I'm going to let you go down this road by yourself. I see it in the numbers. There's no doubt. in that, but what the Sam hell is going on with Coastal right now, beating Marshall, Old Dominion, Texas State. Ethan Vasco is the quarterback, and he's not bad. I don't know what's going on with Coastal. Like they are pulling rabbits out of the hat every week. So I'm going to sit back. I'll make sure this has a screen for some viewing. I got to figure out what's going on with Coastal because they're doing things they shouldn't be doing without Grayson McCall.
Give me the Black Knights, noon Eastern, CBS Sports Network. That's my time slot. Let's go one final one, which might be the trashiest of all season. We're going to back Dana. You know what the funniest thing is? We're taking Houston +7. Nwankwo, their really good defensive tackle, might be out, which is their nose tackle, which might be is concerning. But Houston's run D, since getting healthier, is actually decent. They can't stop anyone through the air. But, I mean, it's Alan Bowman and these receivers. So I think they could do enough to slow down Ollie Gordon. And this, you never know what you're getting with Houston. Like they almost beat Texas, and every other week sometimes they just look like they never played football before. And then some weeks they look like they're a top 20 team. I mean, who knows what's going on? They need this game for probably Dana's job to get to a bowl. It's also their Super Bowl and Senior Day, ruin Oklahoma State season, and I think they match up pretty well. You just hope you get the good version of Donovan Smith. I talked about Oklahoma State. They won 5 in a row. 4 of them were at home, and their opponents went 1 of 12 on 4th down with a -8 turnover margin. They had multiple non-offensive scores, multiple short fields. They were just go back to that West Virginia game. That's the only game they won on the road in the Big 12 during that 5-game winning streak. The game was even statistically, and then West Virginia just vomited in the 4th quarter to give it away. Defense is still vulnerable, Oklahoma State. We saw that last week against UCF. I think Smith can take advantage. And you want to hear the biggest regression stat matchup of the season? Number 1 team in the country on 4th down defense is Oklahoma State. Teams have only converted 3 out of 20 4th downs. You know who's dead last in 4th down conversion rate on offense? Houston, who has converted 4 of 20 on 4th downs. My prediction, Houston goes 3 of 3 on 4th down, gets turnover luck, and beats Oklahoma State, because there is nothing that would make me laugh more and be more fitting for Oklahoma State than the Big 12 changes the rules to get them into the conference championship this weekend, then they lose to Houston to bow out. Cougs outright.
Okay, so I like Houston. I'm probably going to play this with you. Probably should grab it at 7 before it gets down to 6.5. The stat that I look for immediately when Oklahoma State is playing is, are you good at standard downs containing explosives? Because that's where Ollie Gordon has all his runs. And how are you when it comes to yards after contact and missed tackles? Houston is 12th in standard downs explosive on defense. That is definitely an avenue to keep Ollie Gordon from having explosive runs. And then what caught my eye this week is that Houston's defense somehow is 8th in broken tackles allowed. That's good, since Oklahoma State is top 25 in creating broken tackles. Amazingly, we give Dana shit for, being loose in penalties, some sloppiness, not disciplined games. They're actually a very buttoned up group on defense when it comes to tackling. So I'm with you here. That performance by Oklahoma State, like, you would expect some point during the game for them to pick it up, and they never did. There's something is more wrong with that team than just hangover from Bedlam.
Yeah, second straight road game here. I think those numbers are a bit inflated. Donovan Smith is.
Yeah,
you just hope you don't get the guy that's just looks like he can't complete a pass. He's a very rhythmic passer. Like, you saw that against West Virginia. He was like 0 of 8. It looked like he never threw a football before. And then he caught fire like that and, completed, I think, his last 16 passes. So you just have to, as long as he's not, completely off, hopefully he wakes up on the right side of the bed. All right. Before we get to 3 and out, Colin on San Diego State totals, excuse me. Been hot on these all year, unlike last year. So this was you like these Aztecs. They were taking on a surging San Jose State Spartans team. Line's 14.5. Total's 49.5. The San Diego State run D is embarrassing. I mean, it is so bad at any metric. It's them and UAB are just poverty. So you would think Robinson and Cordero, and San Jose State should be able to run all over them. Everyone can. San Jose State's defense is also improving. What do you see here? Over or under?
The market is going down fast. 48 being key. I'll take an over if we get to 48. San Jose State's going to be able to get down the field with their heavy rush attack. San Diego State's 132nd defensively in rushing success rate. They're going to get ran over, steamrolled here. And by the way, San Jose State's really hot right now. I think the question is will San Diego State be able to contribute? They run a lot of inside zone, outside zone, and man concepts, and San Jose State has been horrific against inside zone and man. They only have a 40% success rate in stopping that. That's really bad. That's well below national average. Teams are averaging a big play on 14% of their rushing snaps against San Jose State. So I expect, I'm not saying they're going to convert into points. Really, when I take totals, it's about how many scoring opportunities are you going to create. San Diego State's going to have them in this game. I'm not saying they're going to convert them. It's been a little bit of a problem this year, but they are going to create opportunities. San Jose State is absolutely going to steamroll them on the offensive side of the ball. So, you know, from the surface, you would say San Diego State's defense has the advantage in finishing drives, but if you get a little bit closer, you know, they get in the red zone, it's a TD every time. They allow TDs to everybody. So, you know, San Jose State also, which I could not believe. Everybody can go check the stats on defense. Here's the reason why you got to take the over. San Jose State is dead last in the nation in red zone TD rate. Like 25 of 28. Yeah, 25 of 28 red zone attempts have been a touchdown. 28 is not a lot of red zone attempts, but man, when people get past the 20, they're getting touchdowns against San Jose State. So I want the over here, but I am watching the market. 48 is the key.
And one final game before we go 3 and out. Can't talk a lot of trash. Some FCS or no, some tin horns, some shit passing through tin horns. But we have to save the absolute smelliest rubbish until last. Arkansas in the Corpse Bowl. The Corpse of Arkansas will host the Corpse of FIU. Arkansas is a 29.5-point favorite. Over-under is 50. Games at 7:30 Eastern in prime time. 1, are you going to? Are you watching? If not, 3, what is the bet in this absolute?
1, I have my press credentials. I'm not going. 2, I am definitely watching. I'm going to have money on it. What was 3?
What's the bet then? You're going to have money on it. What's the bet?
Bet's got to be Florida International. I mean, look, Arkansas.
Wow.
Arkansas is saying, like, first off, the number's way too high. The number should be 26. So I think numbers guys like me probably saw it at 31, so we got a hammer on it. But here's Arkansas's motivation, right? Pride. Well, that hasn't shown up at all yet this year. And getting your personal film ready for the portal. Pittman talked this week about how he essentially said everybody's hitting the portal after the Missouri game. Like, we expect a lot of activity in the transfer portal after the Missouri game. Yep. This is going to be a mass exodus for this team. So I think the motivation for players on Arkansas themselves is to generate good film for the portal. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you're playing for. There's no bowl. Your coach could be out the door. If he's sticking around, do you want to play for him? The program is in complete disarray. It's not Chad Morris disarray. Our producer doesn't need to cut it and add it to that little excerpt, but it's bad.
Please add that.
And you know, Florida National, they lost to Middle Tennessee. It's tough because that 34-point loss when I liked him so much last week, like Grayson James didn't even play a snap. That's the quarterback I thought was going to be under center because he doesn't allow as many catastrophic plays. Keon Jenkins does. He had an INT last week. Looks like we're going to see him here because he never got pulled in the game. But Mike McIntyre in his press conference this week spoke very highly of Sam Pittman, said, we're old friends. They were never on staff together anywhere, but they're old friends. And that, you know, he's pulling for Sam in the situation he's in, all the good stuff that you would expect to hear from two guys that are actually friends. So, you know, the under and FIU is the player. It's going to be an ugly ball game. I will find a quadrant in my 16 screen grid to get Arkansas on, but it's so gross. Just, we need the season to end. Oh, by the way, do you know who hates Arkansas? Drink. And Missouri, we've only beaten Missouri once since Drink's been at Missouri. Like,
will Arkansas show up for that game?
No. No,
Yikes.
absolutely not. But
All
drink.
right. So drink wants to run it up.
But do you know where that stems from? So I was told a story this week you know what? I'll save it for next week. Why does drink hate Arkansas?
Save that for next week. Before we get out of here, let's go 3 and out. All right, first down, Friday Night Lights. Speaking of corpses, the corpse of Washington State was ranked in 4-0. They've lost 6 straight, and they won't even go to I guess they could go to a bowl. They got to win out against Colorado and Washington. 4.5-point favorites here. Over under 62.5. Colorado has been covering machine of late, even though they're not winning games. They're also 4-6, need to win out against Washington State and UCLA. It's a little more, I guess they have a better chance of Washington State because who knows what's going on. Excuse me, Utah. They go to Utah, so yeah, I doubt it. Sorry, Colorado fans. So, yeah, I mean, look, will Colorado drop 8? They do. They'll slow down Washington State. The problem is, like, Colorado can't really run it, but will they just run it more? Anyone could just run on Washington State. So interesting matchup there. I guess I'd lean Colorado. I don't think could Washington State really be laying points to anybody. What do you see here? You've been the Colorado whisperer all year. What do you see?
I know. And the thing that popped off the page for me here is an under. I did take an under. Took it earlier today. 62 is key. 59 is key. So see what you can get. But I could go through all the notes in the game, which kind of lead me to want to take a Wazoo side. That when you consider what Cal did to Washington State, it was all Jaden Ott, all of the running, turnovers, Cam Ward's, throwing an interception. He can't hold on to the ball. None of that is what Colorado is going to be able to do to them because Colorado throws behind the line of scrimmage and expects explosives to happen there. And I'm not sure that that's what the formula is going to be here, but the most important thing, and also Colorado does not generate any havoc whatsoever. If you want Cam Ward to implode, you have to generate a little bit of havoc. The Colorado has no tackles for loss. They've only forced 7 fumbles this year, and they're 90th in PBU. So a Cam Ward get healthy game, this could probably be it. But I think this game's under all the way. And one thing that I've kept my eye on is since they made the announcement that Pat Shurmur was going to come in and take over the offense and remove Sean Lewis. Well, Sean Lewis is the inventor of the flash fast. Sean Lewis wants plays to happen every 19 seconds. So I've been watching the clock ever since this was announced against UCLA, 24 seconds per play. Now, at that point, Colorado had averaged about 22.5 seconds per play. They fell down to 24. Last week against Arizona, 29 seconds per play. And I'm watching the game and I'm seeing them walk up to the line of scrimmage. There's no haste, no urgency, 29 seconds per play. They are now slower than Washington State if that keeps up this week. I took an under. The offensive pace isn't going to be there. The explosiveness, sure as shit, ain't going to be there when your average depth of target's like 3 yards. I don't expect Washington State to score against this defense. Colorado's actually really good defensive finishing drives. So I'm taking the under in this game. I think this Colorado offense is way slower than it has been through the first half of the year.
All right, good stuff there. Colin has been the Colorado Whisperer. Let's move on to second down, our favorite overdog for those new here. If you're watching on YouTube, by the way, make sure you hit subscribe. That's just our favorite. Thanks to one of our voicemail callers. 959 Bad Beat. Don't forget about that. We'll have a recap episode as always on Sunday with a quick look ahead to next week. And if I haven't already mentioned it, well, I did on the previous episode, but we will have all of our content for NFL, fantasy, and college football out for you by Wednesday morning. So pray for us and our producers. But the favorite, I'll start. I'm going to go with Auburn. I already talked about it earlier. I don't think Javi is going to play, but even if he does, huge step up in class here. New Mexico State, nothing really to play for. Hugh Freeze, the big favorite GOAT. Give me Auburn. Where are you going?
I'm going to do Texas against Iowa State. The question is, can Texas survive the Matt Campbell 3-3-5 stack? Because Jonathan Brooks is out. The running game is going to lean on CJ Baxter, but more it's going to be about Quinn Ewers' arm. And the answer is yes, they can absolutely survive. Ewers saw this Iowa State defense last year. It was the first time he had seen a 3-3-5 stack in 2022 in week 7. He threw 3 TDs, no INTs. He just had a single throwing mistake that day. At the back of that 3-3-5 for Iowa State is a quarters coverage. Quinn Ewers, 60% success rate against quarters this year and a positive explosive number from an EPA perspective. So When you flip over to the other side, Rocco Becht, it's going to be all on him because Eli Sanders has no juice running the ball whatsoever, and you're not going to have any juice against this Texas front seven. And then Rocco Becht is going to be expected to pass. Texas also runs a lot of quarters and coverage. Rocco Becht has struggled against that all season long. Give me Texas. I know they're on the road. People are going to try to tell you Ames, but schematically, Ewers dominates this 3-3-5 stack. So let's keep it going.
Yeah, I just don't think this inefficient Iowa State offense can consistently do anything also against this Texas D. All right, let's move on to third down. And that's our money line underdog parlay. All right, favorite money line underdogs. I'll start Army. Already talked about this earlier. I don't think Coastal really shows up here, and their run D is bad. Big motivation edge for Army at home. And Jeff Monken, who is the most profitable coach in college football over the past 15 years, as an underdog of more than a field goal. Give me the Black Knights at home, noon kick against a probably disinterested and underprepared Coastal team for the triple option, even though they did face them last year. Revenge year for Army also. Give me the Black Knights as a dog. Where are you going?
Speaking of triples, let's go UNLV here. Elevation in Fort Collins, a problem? Probably not. UNLV went to Reno. They went to Albuquerque. They won on the road there, about the same elevation. So I don't see that being a problem against Air Force. The place to attack the UNLV on defense is with the pass. That's just not going to happen with Air Force. You're going to go into the best part of UNL's defense, which is the run. Barry Odom runs that 3-3-5 stack himself. He is all about max protect against explosive plays. They're 17th in defending rush explosive, so I don't expect Air Force to be able to gash and get anything down the field. There's no real stats for UNLV to say they're going to stop the fullback dive. They're going to stop pulling linemen. I mean, who's really seen that? Hawaii hadn't seen it. They did just fine. And UNLV's got to create a little bit of habit. But really, this is all about what they do on the other side of the ball with that go-go offense.
And Air Force's quarterback is probably out, by the way.
Yeah, and that Air Force, Zach Larrier, is going to be out here. And then when you get to Jensen Jones, their new quarterback, he was not good last week running that offense. He cannot protect the ball. He can't run the play action. The triple was a real problem for him. So Air Force's offense is just broke. I mean, 10 turnovers the last 2 weeks to Army and Hawaii. It's really taken them out of the Mountain West, out of the conversation everywhere. The UNLV offense, if you have not seen, if you're listening to this podcast and you listen to the G5 and you haven't seen this Brennan Marion offense, it's coming to a Power 5 conference soon. Three-headed.
I was ahead of it. Remember, I was so excited about this at a Hawaii, and then they just never went to it fully.
Yeah, people just didn't want Brennan Marion. Like, I don't know if people think that it's a gimmicky offense. I am dying to see this at the Power 5 level. And the reason why, 266 snaps in 21, 250 snaps in 11, 78 snaps in 12, and my favorite, 45 snaps in 22 and 33 snaps in 20. You're going to get 2 tight end sets, 2 running back sets, and sets with 2 running backs and 2 tight ends, all mixed in, all over the place. They're 3-headed running back monster of Vincent Davis, Jaden Thomas, Donovan Lester. They're all averaging near 3 yards after contact. They've each busted 5 explosives. They've combined to create 58 missed tackles. And their quarterback, Jaden Maeva, he is finally running the ball. He had his most carries against Wyoming last week, 2 touchdowns on the ground. These guys are a juggernaut to put up with. When you talk about Kansas State and their counter and their motion and what they do in the pre-snap that confuses everybody with their formations, that's what Brennan Marion and the UNLV offense does. I can't wait to see it. Air Force is broke. Let's go UNLV.
And you didn't even mention Ricky White, who's the best receiver in the conference, Michigan State transfer. He's over 1,000 yards. He's an absolute monster on the outside. Yeah, I agree with this one. And you finally learned after last week. So you're even calling moneyline dog against the Service Academy as a favorite. So our moneyline underdog parlay, Service Academy is an underdog, and an underdog against the Service Academy.
I can't remember Air Force. I can't remember Air Force having 10 fumbles in 2 games or 10 turnovers. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Jensen Jones also just can't throw the ball. So you don't have to worry about like the deep play action shots that Larry can hit. But all right, that'll do it for us. Thanks, as always, to Colin and our producers on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in and listening and supporting the pod or video. 10:30 a.m. Eastern Saturday, we'll be back for BBOC Live. Recap show, be out by Monday morning with a quick look ahead to Week 12. Don't forget about the voicemails, 959-BAD-BEAT. Group of 5 guys. Make sure you check them out. Their episode's already out every Wednesday. They'll be back next week. we will also be back, and everything will be out by Wednesday morning for you for a glorious weekend of football, starting with some action on Wednesday into Thanksgiving and then throughout the weekend. So we appreciate you guys all tuning in. So we want to make sure that you have all the content you need to consume before Wednesday mornings. I know people have crazy holiday schedules. Safe travels to everyone traveling for the holiday. Thanks for tuning in again. Appreciate all of your support. Let's close the year strong. Make sure you subscribe, subscribe. Tell a friend, tell an enemy, you know the drill. Leave a review, 5-star review that really helped us. Did a bunch of giveaways last week. We'll do some more maybe tomorrow or I should say maybe Sunday or next week. But thanks for tuning in. Time for us to go find some last minute winners. We'll see y'all on Saturday morning. Cheers.
Peace out.